I thought my marriage was perfect, until I uncovered a secret so devastating. It didn't just break my heart. It destroyed everything I believed in. A secret growing inside another woman. And the worst part? He still thinks I'll forgive him. Imagine loving someone with every fiber of your being, only to discover they've betrayed you in the worst way possible. And not just a one-time mistake, no. A betrayal that came with consequences. A living, breathing consequence. My husband got his mistress pregnant, and now he expects me to be the bigger person, to understand, to forgive. But let me tell you, there's only so much a woman can take before she breaks. And when I did, I made sure he felt every bit of the pain he put me through. For 8 years, I believed I had everything a woman could ask for. A loving husband, a comfortable home, and a life that, to the outside world, seemed picture-perfect. Jason and I had built something steady, something secure. We had a rhythm, an understanding that felt unshakable. We weren't the same infatuated couple we had been in the early years, but I never expected us to be. Love matures, deepens, settles into something less about wild passion and more about partnership. At least, that's what I told myself. People always said love changes over time, that marriage is about trust and companionship more than constant excitement. And I believed that wholeheartedly. The stolen glances, the late-night whispers, the butterflies. Those had faded, but they had been replaced with something I thought was far more valuable. Stability. A shared life. A future we were both working toward. Jason and I had our routines. Morning coffee together before work. Friday night takeout. Lazy Sunday afternoons on the couch. It wasn't the stuff of fairy tales, but it was ours, and I was happy. Or at least I thought I was. And I trusted Jason completely. Why wouldn't I? He had never given me a reason to doubt him. I never questioned his late nights at the office, the urgent last-minute business trips, or the way he sometimes seemed distant when I tried to engage him in conversation. I brushed off the moments when he seemed preoccupied, chalked it up to stress from work. I told myself that every couple goes through phases where they feel a little disconnected. It was normal. It had to be, because what we had was real, strong, unbreakable. At least that's what I believed, until I found out the truth. It was an ordinary evening, the kind that blurred into the hundreds of others we had spent together over the years. Jason was in the shower, steam curling out from the slightly ajar bathroom door, the sound of running water filling the quiet apartment. I was curled up on the couch, absent-mindedly scrolling through my phone, half watching the rerun of a show we had both seen a dozen times before. It was just another night, another routine moment in our predictable life. Nothing felt off. Nothing seemed wrong. And then Jason's phone vibrated on the coffee table. A soft buzz that should have meant nothing. I wasn't the type to snoop. I never had been. I had never needed to. Jason had always left his phone lying around without a second thought, and I had never felt the urge to check it. Trust was the foundation of our marriage, and I had never questioned him. Not once. But something made me glance at the screen. Maybe it was instinct. Maybe it was fate. Or maybe it was the universe deciding that tonight, my life as I knew it would shatter into a million pieces. A simple text, from an unsaved number. Just a few words, but they carried the weight of a wrecking ball. I feel him kicking again. When are you telling her? My breath caught in my throat. My fingers tightened around my phone as my world tilted. The air in the room suddenly too thick, too heavy. Kicking. My mind latched onto that single word like a vice, refusing to let go, refusing to twist it into anything other than what it clearly meant. Kicking. As in a baby that wasn't mine. A cold wave of nausea washed over me. My heart pounded so violently that I could hear the blood rushing in my ears, muffling the sound of the shower, the TV, everything except the deafening silence inside my head. For a moment I clung to denial. Maybe I had misread it. Maybe there was another meaning, another explanation. Jason wasn't that kind of man. He wouldn't do this to me. But deep in my gut, something twisted, sinking like a stone in my stomach. This was exactly what it sounded like. Picture. It was buried deep in the thread, sent weeks ago. But as soon as I saw it, my stomach clenched so hard I thought I might be sick. Jason. My husband, the man I had trusted with every piece of my heart, was in bed with her. His arm draped possessively around a woman I didn't recognize. His lips pressed to her bare shoulder as she cradled her pregnant belly. She was glowing, smiling, happy. The kind of happiness I hadn't seen in Jason's eyes in a long time. My breath came in short, shallow gasps as I kept scrolling, each message another knife to the gut. They weren't just having an affair. They were in love. Or at least she was. She spoke to him like they were building a future together, like I was the outsider in their story. She sent him ultrasound pictures, updates on doctor's visits, messages filled with excitement about their son. He kicked so much last night. I think he knows when you're not here. I can't wait until we can finally be together without sneaking around. Does she suspect anything? You know I hate lying to her. The words blurred through my tears, but I forced myself to keep reading, needing to understand, needing to know how the man I thought I knew had been living this double life right under my nose. And then I saw the worst part. Jason's reply. Soon, baby. Just a little longer. Just a little longer. He wasn't planning on telling me because he felt guilty. He wasn't struggling with what he had done. He was waiting for the right moment, waiting for the perfect time to leave me. I thought my heart had broken before, but in that moment, as I sat there clutching the phone, staring at the proof that my husband had already moved on, I realized this wasn't heartbreak. This was complete and utter destruction. He had been planning a future with her. Late-night messages discussing baby names, choosing nursery colors, talking about how they would raise their child together. Doctor's appointments scheduled. Promises of a life that didn't involve me. Promises of a life with her. And yet, here he was, walking through the front door every evening, kissing me like nothing had changed, pretending to be the devoted husband who cherished me. I watched him with eyes full of love, never knowing that he was already building another life with someone else. How many times had he touched me with those same hands? The same hands that had held her, that had stroked her hair, that had traced the curve of her pregnant belly? How many times had he smiled at me, kissed me goodbye in the morning, all the while hiding this monstrous betrayal behind his eyes? How could I have been so blind? And the most gut-wrenching part? The one that shattered me even further than the affair itself? He hadn't even planned to tell me. The message I had read. Asterisk, when are you telling her? Asterisk, it wasn't just a passing question. It was a confirmation of everything I hadn't wanted to face. Jason wasn't struggling with guilt. He wasn't wrestling with the weight of his lies. He was waiting for the right moment to break the news to me. She had forced his hand. But even then, his intention wasn't to come clean. He had every plan to keep me in the dark, to let me live in this blissful ignorance while he prepared to become a father with someone else. He wanted it all, his family with me and his future with her. He had convinced himself he could have both. The man I had loved, the man I had trusted, had been living a lie, and I had been the last to know. My body felt numb, like I was standing outside of myself, watching everything happen in slow motion. My mind was drowning in disbelief, desperately trying to process the reality that was crashing down on me. I stared at the words on the screen, but they blurred together, the letters becoming nothing more than a mess of ink swallowed up by the rage, the pain, and the heartbreak surging inside me. My marriage, my entire world, had been built on a lie, a facade so perfect, so carefully constructed, that even I hadn't seen the cracks beneath the surface. The man I had trusted with everything, the man I had given my heart to without hesitation, had been living a double life right under my nose. And I had never seen it coming. Was I that blind? That naive? I had always prided myself on being intuitive, on reading people, on knowing Jason better than anyone. I had always believed that I could sense when something was off, that I could feel it in the air when things weren't right. But now, as I sat there holding his phone in my trembling hands, I realized the truth. I had only known the version of him he allowed me to see. The version he had carefully constructed to keep me in the dark, to keep me believing in a marriage that was nothing but an illusion. The real Jason, the one who could betray me so completely, so effortlessly, had been a stranger all along. The man I had shared my life with, the man I had thought I knew inside and out, had been hiding behind a mask. I had never known the truth. And now, as that truth crushed me, I had to face the most painful realization of all. The life we had built, the future we had planned, had never been mine. It had always been someone else's. My body felt numb, like I was detached from reality, unable to process what was happening. My mind was drowning in disbelief, the weight of it suffocating me. I stared at the words on the screen, but they blurred together, overtaken by the whirlwind of rage, heartbreak, and betrayal swelling inside me. My marriage, my entire world, had been built on a lie, a carefully crafted lie that I had never even questioned. The man I had trusted with everything, the one who I thought knew me better than anyone, had led a double life right under my nose. And I had never seen it coming. Was I that blind? That naive? I had always prided myself on being intuitive, on being able to read people, to understand the unspoken truths that others might miss. I had thought I knew Jason better than anyone, that I could see through any facade. But now, sitting there with his phone in my hands, I realized the painful truth. I had only known the version of him he allowed me to see. The one he carefully presented to me, the version of him that had laughed with me, held me close, and whispered that he loved me, all while harboring secrets that would destroy me. The real Jason, the one who could betray me so completely, who could shatter everything we had built together, had been a stranger all along. The man I thought I had spent years loving, the one I had entrusted with my heart, had been someone I didn't even recognize. And now, that truth was staring me in the face, more brutal and unforgiving than anything I had ever imagined. A cold, calculated clarity settled over me, as if my mind had finally clicked into a brutal, undeniable focus. This wasn't just an affair. This was something much, much worse. A child. A life being created between Jason and another woman. A permanent bond that nothing could erase. There was no undoing this. No apology could fix it. No explanation would make it better. This wasn't a mistake, a momentary lapse. This was a conscious choice. A choice to build a future with someone else while pretending to build one with me. The weight of it settled heavily on my chest. The crushing realization that everything had changed. I could never unknow what I knew now. Our life, our marriage, had been nothing but a house of cards, and now it was collapsing in slow motion. I inhaled shakily, forcing my trembling hands to set his phone down gently on the coffee table. My fingers were numb, but I somehow managed to steady myself. Jason was still in the shower, completely oblivious to the storm that had just erupted in my soul. His world was still intact, his carefully constructed lies still standing, but the second he stepped out of that bathroom, everything was about to change. Just like mine had. I wasn't sure what I was going to say to him. I didn't know how I was going to confront him, or if I even wanted to hear his excuses. But I did know this: when he walked out of that shower, when his feet hit the floor, his world was going to come crashing down. The truth was out, and he wouldn't be able to hide behind his lies any longer. It was time to face what he had done to me. Time to face the man who had shattered everything I believed in. That night, I couldn't hold it in anymore. The weight of the lies, the betrayal, the realization that everything I had believed in was nothing but a carefully constructed illusion. It was suffocating me. I had spent days in a haze, trying to process the truth, trying to find a way to cope with the depth of Jason's deception. But the moment had arrived, and I couldn't keep pretending anymore. I walked into the living room, my heart pounding in my chest like it was trying to escape my body. Jason was sitting on the couch, relaxed, clueless, as if nothing had changed. His face was calm, a comfortable smile playing on his lips, and for a split second, I almost wanted to believe that everything was normal. But it wasn't, could never be again. I couldn't let it go any longer. The silence, the pretending, it had to end. I had the evidence. His phone, the messages, the pictures, the proof of his affair, the proof of his betrayal, all of it was right there in my hand. I couldn't pretend I hadn't seen it. I couldn't ignore the reality staring me in the face any longer. With a trembling hand, I thrust the phone toward him, almost unable to look him in the eye. My voice, though barely more than a whisper, was filled with venom. I didn't even recognize the woman speaking, but I couldn't stop her. Who is she? The words felt foreign, like they didn't belong to me. They felt like an accusation I never thought I would have to make. An accusation that somehow seemed impossible even as it left my lips. But they were real, and in that moment, I needed the truth. I needed to hear him admit it. I needed him to look at me and say something, anything that could explain how we had arrived at this moment. Because the truth, as bitter and as painful as it was the only thing that could set me free. Jason's face went pale. His entire body froze, as if time had stopped around him. His eyes widened in terror, and for a brief moment, he looked like a deer caught in headlights. Frozen, vulnerable, exposed. His lips parted as if to speak, but no words came out. It was as if his entire body had shut down, like he was hoping that by remaining silent, he could somehow erase the truth. But there was no escaping it. The truth was right there, staring him in the face, undeniable and unforgiving. The room was thick with tension. I could feel the air pressing in on me, suffocating me, and yet, it was impossible to breathe. The silence stretched on, unbearable, suffused with an almost deafening weight. It felt like the whole world was holding its breath, waiting for him to speak, for him to finally face what he had done. I waited, but the words I needed from him didn't come. There were no apologies, no explanations, no desperate pleas for forgiveness. Instead, he just stood there, frozen, staring at the phone in my hand as if it held the power to make this all disappear. His gaze was fixed on the screen, as if looking at it long enough would somehow change the reality of the situation. But the truth was right there, clear as day, and it wouldn't be erased by his silence. He couldn't even look me in the eye. He couldn't face what he had done. Not even now, when the consequences were standing right in front of him. I wanted him to say something, anything, but all I got was a man who couldn't even find the courage to admit what he had done. And in that moment, I realized there would be no apology that could ever undo this. No words would be enough to fix the devastation he had caused. I wasn't going to let him hide from it. Not this time. Not after everything he had put me through. He had lied to me, betrayed me, and shattered my world. I wasn't going to let him weasel out of this, to slip away unscathed, hiding behind his silence. I had waited long enough for the truth. I steadied my breath, though my voice trembled with fury, every word laced with the pain and anger that had been building inside me. Tell me, I demanded, stepping closer. My gaze was unwavering, my eyes locked on his, refusing to let him look away. Or I swear, I will find out myself. Something shifted in his eyes then. I could see it. A flicker of panic, a subtle but undeniable shift. The mask he had been wearing for so long was slipping, and the truth was finally catching up with him. He couldn't run from it anymore. The realization dawned on him, slow but inevitable. There was no escaping this moment. No more hiding. No more pretending. This was the moment of truth. The moment everything he had worked so hard to keep buried would come crashing down around him. I wasn't going to let him wiggle out of it. Not this time. Not after everything. I had already seen the evidence, felt the heartbreak, and come to terms with the fact that the man I loved had betrayed me in the worst way possible. There was no place left for him to hide. No more lies. No more excuses. It was time for him to face the reality of what he had done, the destruction he had caused in my life. The walls had already come down, and I wasn't about to let him rebuild them. Not anymore. And then the floodgates opened. Jason finally spoke, his voice barely audible, cracking under the weight of what he had been holding in. His words tumbled out in a desperate, frantic confession, each one slicing through the air like shards of glass. His shoulders slumped, his face drained of color, as if he had finally given in to the crushing weight of his lies, unable to carry the burden any longer. Her name was Sarah. The words seemed to hang in the air, each syllable a reminder of the betrayal that had been festering in the shadows for over a year. They had been seeing each other for more than a year. Over a year. The realization hit me like a ton of bricks. How had he hidden this from me for so long? How had he looked me in the eyes every day, kissed me goodnight, told me he loved me, while living a completely different life behind my back. I had trusted him with everything, and yet, he had been deceiving me all along, building another life in secret, without a second thought. And then, as if that wasn't enough, came the punch to the gut. The words he said next felt like they were being ripped from him, each one more painful than the last. "She's 6 months pregnant," he whispered, his eyes unable to meet mine. 6 months pregnant. The words hit me with a force that left me gasping for air. I could barely comprehend it, the reality of it sinking in slowly, each piece of the puzzle falling into place. He was going to be a father, with her. While I had been standing here, thinking everything was fine, he had been planning a future with someone else. Someone he had betrayed me with for months. Couldn't breathe. Couldn't think. The world around me felt like it was spinning out of control, and all I could hear was the hollow sound of his confession echoing in my head. 6 months pregnant. I had been living a lie. He tried to explain himself, but every word that left his mouth only dug the hole deeper. He fumbled for excuses, his voice shaky, as if trying to soften the blow he had delivered. "I never wanted this to happen," he whispered, his voice laced with regret, as if that somehow made it better. "I made a mistake, but I love you. I don't want to lose you." His voice cracked with emotion, the kind of emotion that he must have thought would make me soften, make me forgive him or at least understand his point of view. But I couldn't bring myself to feel sorry for him. Not after everything. Not after all the lies, all the time he had spent deceiving me, all the trust he had shattered. How dare he stand there, looking at me with that pitiful expression, and say he didn't want to lose me. The woman he had lied to for months, the woman he had deceived time and time again, the woman he had betrayed in the worst possible way. The nerve, the audacity. He was standing there, trying to make me feel sorry for him, like I was the one who had done something wrong. But the truth was, I wasn't the one who had done anything wrong. I hadn't betrayed him. I hadn't broken our vows. I hadn't lied to his face, built a secret life with another woman, and left me to wonder where everything had gone wrong. He was the one who had broken us, and yet he was trying to paint himself as the victim. I couldn't let that happen. I wasn't going to let him manipulate the situation, make me feel guilty for something that wasn't my fault. He had made his choices, and now he would have to face the consequences. And just when I thought he couldn't possibly hurt me more, he said something that sent a chill down my spine, freezing me in place. "She wants to keep the baby, and I want to do the right thing. But I also want us to stay together." Stay together? The words hit me like a punch to the gut. He wanted us to stay together? After everything? He wanted to keep his happy little family with me, while he was having a child with another woman. He expected me to just accept the child, the living, breathing proof of his betrayal, and carry on like nothing had changed? My stomach twisted in knots, bile rising in my throat. My hands clenched into fists at my sides as the anger inside me bubbled over, threatening to consume me entirely. How could he even ask for that? How could he stand there and expect me to just swallow this, to forgive him, to act like none of this had happened? The nerve, the audacity. He had already destroyed everything, and now he was trying to rewrite the narrative like it was just a small mistake, like the fact that he was going to be a father to another woman's child was something I should just accept. I felt the room close in around me, the weight of his words suffocating me. He had no idea what he was asking for. He had no idea how far beyond forgiveness this had gone. The damage was done, and there was no going back from that. Couldn't breathe. The weight of his words felt like an anvil pressing down on my chest. Stay together? As if I was supposed to just accept this child, this other woman, this entire life he had built behind my back, and carry on with him as if nothing had happened? No, I wasn't that kind of woman. I wasn't going to sit back and let him tear my heart apart, let him destroy everything we had worked for, and then expect me to clean up the mess. He had made his choices. Now it was time for him to face the consequences. The anger in me flared, hot and blinding. He had crossed a line. A line I would never forgive him for. And deep down, I knew this was no longer about saving our marriage, no longer about trying to fix things or work through this together. It was about reclaiming my dignity, my self-respect. It was about showing him that I was not someone he could walk all over, that I wouldn't allow myself to be his second choice, his consolation prize. The trust had been shattered beyond repair. The love I had felt, the bond one had believed was unbreakable, gone. And I would not let him make me feel like the fool, like I should just take him back and pretend like nothing had changed. He needed to understand this was the breaking point. There was no coming back from this. I stared at him for a long, silent moment, my chest rising and falling with each shallow breath. Jason seemed to be waiting for my response, his eyes flickering with a mix of guilt and hope. But I didn't have to say anything right away. The wheels were already turning in my mind, each thought more precise than the last. He had made a grave mistake, a mistake that would cost him everything. And now he was going to regret ever thinking he could get away with it. I didn't know exactly what I was going to do yet, but one thing was clear. Jason had no idea what was coming. He was still standing there, unsure of what to expect, but I could see the panic slowly creeping into his eyes. He thought maybe I'd be willing to forgive him, that somehow we could just go on with our lives. But that couldn't have been further from the truth. By the time I was done with him, he would wish he had never betrayed me. He would regret ever making me feel like I wasn't enough, like I wasn't worthy of loyalty and respect. Because this wasn't just about a relationship anymore. It was about my pride, my dignity, and making sure he never took anyone for granted again. Jason thought he had it all figured out. He thought he could play both sides, that I would be the dutiful, forgiving wife, willing to accept his betrayal for the sake of preserving our family. He believed that after all his lies, all his deceit, I would still stand by his side, like some picture-perfect wife, while he played daddy to a child that wasn't even his own. He thought that, in the end, I'd stay in my place and accept his decision to divide his loyalty between me and her. But he was gravely mistaken. He underestimated me. He underestimated how much I valued myself, how much I respected the life I had built. And most importantly, he underestimated the depths of my anger and the strength of my resolve. He had taken me for granted, assumed I would be passive, that I would just let it all slide for the sake of convenience. Now he was about to find out just how wrong he was. I wasn't going to be the woman who silently accepted betrayal and moved on as if nothing had changed. He had crossed a line, and I was done playing the part of the understanding wife. This wasn't just about forgiveness anymore, it was about retribution. And I wasn't going to rest until he fully understood the price of his actions. I didn't waste a second. The very next morning, I walked into the courthouse and filed for divorce. There was no hesitation, no moment of doubt. What was there to consider? Jason had made his choice, and now I was making mine. He had shattered everything. My trust, my heart, our future, and I wasn't going to let him think for 1 second that I would tolerate it. There was no "let's work this out" nonsense. No more discussions, no more empty apologies. Jason had betrayed me in the most unforgivable way possible. And I wasn't going to sit around waiting for him to fix what he had destroyed. I wasn't just his wife. I was someone who deserved respect. Someone who deserved more than lies and broken promises. The moment I signed those papers, I felt a weight lift off my shoulders. It was like I had finally taken control of my life again. Like I was no longer bound to a man who thought he could have it both ways. I wasn't going to be treated like a fool. And in that moment, I knew I was done with him. Done with the lies, done with the deceit, done with the pain. But my revenge didn't end with just a divorce. Oh no, Jason had taken far more from me than just trust. We had built everything together, our home, our savings, our future. Our lives were intertwined, our assets shared. Nothing was just his to keep. And I wasn't about to let him walk away with everything he had taken from me. Not without consequences. The evidence I had gathered, his texts, his lies, was more than enough to ensure the court wouldn't side with him. He thought he could have it all, me, her, the life we built together, but no, he was going to lose it all. I wasn't going to let him get away with the betrayal, the years of deception. Jason had underestimated me, and now he was going to pay for it. I wasn't just taking his love, I was taking his future, his career, his assets. He would lose everything he had ever worked for, just like he had tried to take everything from me. I wasn't going to let him rebuild without facing the full weight of his actions. The house? Half mine. The savings? Half mine. And when it came time to divide everything we had accumulated, Jason would learn that betrayal came with a heavy price. No, I wasn't just divorcing him. I was dismantling the life he had tried to build without me, piece by piece. And by the time I was done, he would wish he had never crossed me. As the divorce proceedings unfolded, Jason found himself on the losing end of the battle. He thought he could keep everything, his money, his house, his new life. But when the court saw the evidence, his position crumbled. His lies were laid bare for everyone to see, and there was no escaping the consequences. He lost half of everything. The house, the car, the savings, they were no longer his. All of it. Everything he had once believed was his to keep was gone. He wasn't the man who could have it all anymore. His selfish choices, his betrayal, had cost him everything he had worked so hard to protect. And that sense of invincibility he had once carried is shattered in an instant. But the best part came when Sarah found out what had happened. The woman he had hoped would be his fresh start, the woman he thought would appreciate his promises and his wealth, had her own plans. When she realized he wouldn't be the wealthy provider she had promised her, when she saw the man who had once seemed so capable and secure was now left with nothing, she left him too. It was as if karma had turned on him in full force. Jason had lost both me and her, and in the end, he was left with nothing but his own regrets. The life he had envisioned, the one where he could betray me and walk away with everything, was nothing more than a distant memory. There he was, the man who thought he could juggle two lives without consequence, the man who thought he could have it all, the wife, the lover, the child, and still keep his wealth. But in the end, he had nothing. No wife, no lover, no wealth, not even the respect he once had. Jason was left alone, betrayed by both the woman he had wronged and the life he had shattered. He had no one to turn to. He had nobody but himself to blame for the wreckage of his life. As soon as he realized the gravity of his situation, Jason came crawling back. He begged me to reconsider. He pleaded for another chance, saying he was sorry, that he had made a mistake, that he loved me and would do anything to fix it. He tried every trick in the book. Remorse, guilt, tears, but I wasn't falling for it. Love doesn't come with betrayal. It doesn't come with lies, with secret children, with broken trust. His words meant nothing anymore. How could they? They were just another set of lies, another attempt to manipulate me into accepting his infidelity. But I wasn't the same woman I had been when we first met. I had seen the truth and I was stronger for it. I had walked away once, and I was never going to make the same mistake again. Jason had shown me who he truly was, and there was no room for someone like him in my life anymore. His apology wasn't enough. His promises weren't enough. Nothing could erase the hurt he had caused, and no amount of begging would ever undo the damage. I stood tall, unwavering in my resolve. I wasn't going to be the woman who forgave betrayal just because it came with tears and remorse. He had lost me forever, and that was something he would never get back. I walked away from that marriage with my head held high. The anger and the pain were there, yes, but they didn't define me. I didn't lose anything in that divorce. I gained my freedom, my peace, and the knowledge that I could survive on my own, without the man who had destroyed me. He had tried to break me, but in the end, I was the one who came out on top. Jason had taken so much from me. My trust, my sense of security, my belief in the future we had built together. But what he didn't realize was that he had only made me stronger. His betrayal had torn down the walls I had built around my heart, but it also cleared the space for something better. Self-respect, independence, and the understanding that I deserved more than what he had ever offered. The road ahead wasn't easy, but it was mine to navigate. I was no longer chained to the past, to the lies, or to the man who had once promised me everything and taken it all away. I was free to rebuild my life, to trust again, this time in myself. And as for Jason, he would live with the consequences of his choices for the rest of his life. I didn't need revenge to feel satisfied. The best revenge was knowing that I had walked away with my dignity intact, while he had lost everything. His family, his wealth, his love. Because, you know what? The truth is, I won. I walked away from a man who thought he could have everything without consequence. I got my dignity, my self-respect, and my life back. And that, in the end, was all I really needed. Jason thought he could break me, play both sides, and still come out on top. But in the end, I'm the one who stood strong. I faced the truth, didn't let it define me, and made the hardest decision of my life. The decision to walk away. The decision to reclaim my power. I didn't need him to validate me. I didn't need his apologies or his promises. I had learned that my worth wasn't tied to his love or his lies. I found my strength in letting go, and that strength is what carried me forward. I had the courage to start anew, and no one could take that away from me. In the end, it wasn't about revenge. It was about knowing my value and choosing to live a life where I was treated with the respect I deserved. And that, my friends, was the ultimate victory. If you enjoyed the story, make sure to subscribe for more. You won't believe what happens next.